Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Soulful Living with Megs. As always, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm very grateful to spend these next few moments of connection together, and you mean a lot to me. So thank you for tuning in. I'm looking forward to diving into this topic today because I feel like I have a lot to say about it, considering I experience this constantly in my life. And I wanted to talk about things that you can do when you feel overwhelmed, slash how to self-regulate a bit. And I've said this, I can't even tell you how many times, probably so many times now. Like, we get it, Megan, you're a sensitive human being. But as you guys know, I get overwhelmed very, very quickly. And the environment, as I said before, affects me a lot. And whether I am at work and my to-do list that I, of course, have already written out and in my mind have planned for the day gets flooded with a lot of last-minute tasks that I wasn't prepared for, or being in large and loud crowds I wasn't intending on being in at a particular time, or even when I am just bearing a little bit too much on my plate at once, I get pretty flustered. And sometimes for me in those moments, it's really hard to jump back into a mode where I feel focused and calm. So if you can relate to what I just mentioned, I want to share some of the things that I personally do to regulate in those moments. And of course, disclaimer here, you guys know I'm not licensed in any way to say that these techniques are correct or what you should be doing, but a lot of these things have worked for me many times and time again. So I'm hoping that if you haven't heard about one of these, that it might work for you too. And so yeah, let's get into some of the things that I do to self-regulate and bring me back into a state of feeling calm when I am overwhelmed. The first thing that I try to do, which this one is a little bit hard for me to do at times, is to genuinely let myself feel my emotions. And I feel like sometimes I think I do this constantly where I'm like, yeah, like I am letting myself feel my emotions, but I don't know that I'm actually like fully allowing myself to feel in the capacity that I need to feel. And I'll kind of explain what that means in a second. But for me personally, if I'm overly stressed and overwhelmed or anxious, and a lot of that anxiety comes from feeling overwhelmed and stressed, I tend to cry. I cry in a lot of circumstances in my life. And I feel like if I don't let myself cry in a safe space, I'm keeping those big emotions stuck inside my body. And we know that by doing that, it's not helpful or healthy for our nervous system. And like I said before, like I feel like sometimes I don't allow myself to fully feel those feelings. Like I'll have a cry, but if I need to jump back into work, if I'm at work and having a cry, or even in therapy, I'm getting better at this, but like I'll cry when something comes up, and then I like almost try to like I'm not crying everything out, if that makes sense. Like I try to, like I cry, but then I'm like, sometimes you just need a good sob, and that's okay. Sometimes you need a 10-minute cry, and that's absolutely okay. And so I want you to remember that letting yourself feel what your body needs to feel in a safe space will truly help your body self-regulate. And of course, depending upon where you are at the moment of your big emotion, it might not be the most appropriate time or place to feel, or sorry, I shouldn't say not the most appropriate time, because I think any time that emotions come up, they are valid and they need to be felt, but it may not be in the most amazing place to feel those feelings, like if you're at work or something, or even in a meeting or whatever, and you're just hearing all these things that you have to do and it's starting to feel overwhelming. But if you're able to, in the space that you're in, take a 5-minute break to step outside of the office and go outside and breathe in some fresh air, or go to the washroom into a stall, that could be a quick, safe space to get those feelings out, just to have a good cry or a good feeling of anger. And huge emotions like that really last about 90 seconds, and then beyond that they get easier to be felt, and the energy will be less and less charged. You know what I mean? And so for 90 seconds, if you can take a step outside, feel what your body needs to feel, allow your body to cry or be angry, and be present with that emotion while not judging the parts of yourself that need to feel those feelings, because we are all meant to feel the things that we feel, and judging ourselves for feeling those things are teaching those parts within us that we have to suppress, and suppressing will not help the feeling pass, and it'll just get harder to then feel what you need to feel. So that's my first piece of advice, is to actually let yourself feel what you need to feel. And being vulnerable, of course, is scary, but the more times that you do and you're not apologizing for feeling what you need to feel, the easier it will become, and then it will feel, I think, less heavy. Something else that you could maybe incorporate to help you self-regulate is finding a breathing technique that you can always turn to that will calm your insides. And some examples of that could include deep belly breathing. I used to, when I was teaching dance back in Calgary, I used to tell the kiddos to put their hands on their belly and start doing deep belly breaths, and they were nice and slow, and I said, like, let your hands feel your stomach expanding out like a balloon, and then contracting in as you breathe in and out. And so deep belly breaths may help you. Something that I personally like to do is inhale for 4, and then at the height of my breath, when I feel like I can't breathe in anymore, I'll take 2 short breaths in, and then I will exhale out for 8. And for me personally, I find that especially helpful at night if I'm feeling anxious. That really calms me down, and it actually kind of gets me tired. And it's something that at work, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I really need to calm down, I'll do that breathing technique, and yeah, no, that just helps me out. But even breathing in deeply for 4, holding your breath for 4 counts, and then exhale out for 8, that may help calm your nervous system as well. I learned this other self-regulation tactic. It's called tapping, and I learned it a couple years ago in therapy. And you basically do this in 5 steps. And from what I'm reading here, because I needed to pull up some facts for you guys, what you need to do is in this overwhelming feeling that you're in right now, identify that you are feeling this. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, you can kind of assess the intensity of this feeling. And I think that by doing that, it's supposed to help monitor how you feel after, or like if the discomfort dissipates, or things like that. And then basically you have to establish a phrase in which you're going to address as you're tapping, and it's supposed to focus on 2 main goals. And this thing says acknowledging the issue and then accepting yourself despite the problem. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed, you could say, even though I'm feeling overwhelmed in this moment, I deeply accept myself. Or you can say, even though I'm feeling overwhelmed in this moment, this will pass. Or I am more than this feeling, whatever kind of resonates with you that you could say. And then for the actual tapping part of it, you have different points on your body. And when I was in therapy, I was taught the top of your head is a point that you can tap as you're saying the sequence. The sides of your hand where you're doing like a karate chop. I guess that's the best way to explain the side of your hand near your pinky. You can tap in that area. You can tap on like just above your eyebrows. You can tap even on the tops of your cheekbones, or I guess that's kind of under the eye area. Very lightly do that. You can tap on your collarbone, and then yeah. So I was taught those areas. I feel like I was taught on my stomach too, but the point is to find those areas where you begin tapping that, and then you speak that phrase a handful of times. And as you finish, you're tapping the side of your hand 5 to 10 times as you're saying this phrase. You tap the other side, and then you go through all of that, and then basically you check in with yourself after you finish tapping all of those points, and after you've said that to yourself, you can kind of go back to the scale of like, how am I feeling now? Am I feeling a little bit better? And I guess you're supposed to do it until you're on the scale of around 0 that you feel definitely a lot better. And I've done this a handful of times, but for me, like personally, if I'm at work and I can't exactly, speak out loud to myself those phrases that many times, I kind of just tap without saying anything, and that I think helps my nervous system calm down anyways. Or even if I'm thinking that phrase, by just me, the physical motion of me tapping has calmed me down. And I also like to kind of talking into the more like physical aspect of what you can do for your body. I like to hold my hand on my heart when I need to feel a little bit of extra love and support. And as I'm doing my deep belly breaths or my breathing sequence that works for me, I'll put my hand on my heart. And it's just like a way to like remind my body that like I'm here and I'm protecting you and I'm warming you. And that definitely helps me feel less overwhelmed when I'm in those high energy moments of like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Just to remind yourself, if you can't get a hug from somebody else, like I'm here for you. Got to tell those parts that. I think that's super important. Other things that I like to do to self-regulate when I feel overwhelmed is going on walks. And I try to do this outside. I feel like that is where I get the most benefit. And the days in which I feel very overwhelmed and like very charged leaving work, I'll actually go on a walk and I won't put any music in. Normally I like to listen to a podcast or listen to music, but just being aware of the natural sounds around me, whether it's people talking or the birds or the waves of the water, that, and then just breathing as I'm doing that, it is so grounding and so calming. And that's just made a huge difference. One, I'm getting that physical exercise and exerting that energy, but two, being just so mindful of the natural sounds around me and not overstimulated with music or, more pieces of advice, things like that. Like it's really helped me to just get out in nature and ground myself. But I think movement in any way, shape, or form, like I said, whether it's walking, running, dancing, is super helpful for me. And you're releasing those endorphins when you do that. And I think it just helps calm you down, especially. And it's also like another way to express emotions that maybe need to be felt. You're kind of expelling it through your body in a different way. On top of letting yourself feel what your body needs to feel, you're also expressing it in a physical form, which I think is important. And of course, if you're working and you can't exactly stop and get some physical exercise in that moment, just like taking 5 minutes away from the specific task that you're working on, going into like a different room, or even like riding the elevator to a different floor, whatever it is, like just taking a step out when you're feeling overwhelmed and then coming back into the space, it will feel renewed and refreshed. And you're almost like having a new pair of eyes when you come back into that, because I know when I'm super overwhelmed and I'm in that heightened state and I've been crying, it's like my brain shuts off and I really don't know what the next step forward is. Like I cannot work on so many tasks. I'm thinking about this meme that I saw online about like something to do with like ADHD, and it was like a woman walking around a kitchen or something and like going back and forth and like being like, oh, this way and this and then this and going back and forth. And that's literally how my mind feels when I'm overwhelmed. I'm trying to do everything at one time, but we know that that's not in at all productive and not practical. And so taking 5 minutes away from your task, coming back to it with a fresh set of eyes, I think is super helpful. My therapist also shared with me 2 different ways in which I can implement these practices at work, which I think is so helpful, and it really doesn't take a long time. But she said, in the moments you're feeling overwhelmed, find 3 things in your environment where you are right now that stick out to you. So sit down and then literally scan the room that you're in, and the first 3 things that jump out at you, just pay attention to what they are. And you don't have to have any meaning behind this, but if you're looking around and you see the poster on the wall, note that you see this poster on the wall, and scan again, and oh, you see the coffee cup on the table, and then you scan again, and oh, I see the trees outside my window blowing in the wind, anything like that. Just acknowledging 3 things in your environment, I think kind of allows you to get out of your head a little bit more, and just like allows you to focus on something different instead of that overwhelming feeling. And she also told me that you can find a body part that is neutral and not charged with this anxious, overwhelming energy. And normally it's usually like your feet or your seat. And when I was practicing this technique, I had said like, yeah, I definitely feel neutral in my feet. I feel very charged in my upper chest, like short of breath. I'm feeling this overwhelming feeling right then and there, and it's like almost at my throat. And so she was saying, as you're breathing, think about looking at the part of you that is feeling overwhelmed from that neutral spot. And so I was imagining in that moment, as my eyes are closed, that I was sending my energy. I was sitting in like where my feet were, which was very neutral, and there was no place of judgment, nothing, like truly a neutral space. And I was just observing the part in my body that I was feeling the overwhelming feeling. And I think that just allows you to separate it a bit. It allows the part to exist within you, but there's a lot of cop cars that just drove by. I'm not sure that you heard those sirens. If you did, I'm so sorry. But it just allows you to separate, I think, those parts within you, so you don't become all entangled, because sometimes it's hard to see the through line of like, I'm feeling all of this and all of this, but just being able to acknowledge that it's there and not judge it because of it, and being in that neutral space, it like instantly calmed me down. So if you can imagine like yourself doing that, and just sometimes it's hard to visualize. I totally get it. Like I'm still working on that aspect of it, but just allowing your energy to flow to that neutral space, and then looking up at the part of you that is feeling that anxious, overwhelmed feeling, and then like, okay, I acknowledge that it's there. I see it. I'm just going to let it sit. And then I think, again, separating that part really just allows it to be. Yeah, it was just really calming. I liked that exercise, so thank you for that. Some self-care and mindfulness activities I like to do that often ground me are taking Epsom salt baths or bubble baths, or if I have, guys, I love baths, if you couldn't tell. I take one almost every single night when I'm not washing my hair. And yeah, you can say you're just basically sitting in your own filth, but I shower in the middle of the day when I'm at work too, after I work out, okay? So anyways, I just love it. I have a pretty deep bath, and so I'll fill it up to where I'm basically neck deep when I'm leaning back, and it's so relaxing. And so I enjoy doing that. I also like to cold plunge in the ocean. Maybe not the ocean, maybe not the beach right near me, but when I go visit family in Victoria, I love cold plunging with them there because I feel like the water is just a lot cleaner for sure. I also like to sauna. I like to take hot showers because it really feels like somebody's giving me a hug. You know what I mean? Doing face masks, I love. Making a nutritious and healthy snack. I love to snack. I love eating. It's one of my favorite activities to do. And so making something that will nourish my body often helps ground me and just makes me feel a lot better. Getting exercise, as I've kind of said before, I think that's really important and helps ground me. And when I'm at the capacity to do this, I really love spending time with the people in my life. And I've learned this about myself, that because I'm sensitive and when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I take a little bit longer to recharge my battery, I guess you could say. And so it takes me a bit to answer texts. It takes me a bit to really make plans with my friends sometimes because I need a little bit of time to myself. Actually, I need a lot of time with myself to really fill my cup and my soul and nourish what my body needs. But I also know that being with my friends really helps take my mind off things, really helps me get out of my body and just like enjoy the time and the energy that I'm surrounded with. And so that definitely helps me, and something that I recommend you doing if you do feel capacity to do so, but also knowing that we all sometimes just need time to ourselves to ground ourselves first, and that's totally okay. You don't always have to be seeing people. Sometimes you have to be with yourself for a bit, and then as long as you have capacity, I think spending time with good company can really help ground you. But getting out of an overwhelmed mind or an anxious mindset or out of that fight or flight is absolutely challenging, and it takes practice. And I'm still learning as I'm going, and I'm sure that there are way more mindful activities that I do, like journaling or reading. There's so many more things that I know I do that really help ground me, but sometimes it's hard to think about those when you are in that fight or flight or that overwhelmed state. But the more go-to techniques I feel like that you'll have in your toolbox will just help ease those feelings over time. And it's inevitable that we're going to go through overwhelming periods because we can't control anything aside from ourselves and how we respond to the world around us. But I think if we do things and put practices in place to mitigate those overwhelming moments, it will just allow us to live a bit more comfortable, I guess. And just a reminder that there's only one you. And so it's important to take care of yourself, and it's important to attend to the needs that you need when you are feeling overwhelmed. And I also want to say that it's so normal too, if you're feeling overwhelmed, that you throw out all of the techniques that you have in your toolbox because you are so overwhelmed you can't separate the thoughts, and you're just so frazzled. There are times where I know I have all of these techniques that I can pull from, but I sometimes freeze when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and that's okay. And it's just a reminder that life isn't linear, and you need to give yourself grace in those moments and let yourself freeze, because you need to do that. Otherwise you would be able to pull out all of those techniques. Sometimes you have to freeze, let yourself sit in that for a bit before you can then move forward with all of these other techniques. And so I just wanted to say that that's super normal and so okay for you to do that as well. And if you forget all of these techniques, that's so okay. You don't have to remember everything. We're already juggling so much in our minds. Adding more to the list of, I should do this and this and this and this. But I just give yourself some grace because you absolutely deserve it. And thank you so much for spending this time with me and clicking on this episode. And if you wouldn't mind sharing it with somebody that you feel could resonate with it, I would absolutely appreciate that. I can't wait to connect with you in our very next episode, and please let me know if there are topics that you want me to explore. I'll put a post out about this, but I really want to talk about the things that you want to hear. I'm here for you ultimately. I'm here to support you and make us feel loved and wanted, you know? So, yeah, guys, I hope your week is filled with so much opportunity. I hope it's filled with so much joy and love and light, and just know that I'm sending all of that energy to you, and I hope that you feel it, and we will chat next Monday. Okay, bye.